is going. Um, so yeah, welcome. I'm excited for the talk today. I want to give you a little bit of background on why I'm doing this talk today. I'm going to be reviewing a study right here. It might be showing up backwards in Zoom, but I'll be sharing it on a slide later. It's called Perceptual and Metabolic Responses During Resistance Training, Comparing Low Load with BFR to High Load Training. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to be that boring with my language during the talk, but that's the title, and I'll definitely send the link out to that for anyone that wants to hear about it. But here's why I'm doing this today. So first of all, I am double certified in blood flow restriction training. I have 100% dived into all of the science and also practical application of using BFR over the last 2 years. I've worked with hundreds of people now in my BFR program, and I've been a trainer for 30 years, and I continue to be literally amazed at the results I'm seeing with this method. And so as I continue to learn about this, my passion is to get this out to more people, because I really think this is a game changer, especially for people as we're aging, as a great tool to help people age better, age with more strength, less pain, and be able to do all the things we love to do. So when I saw this new study come out, it caught my eye. And the reason it caught my eye, it's because it's a clear example, one of the clearest examples I've seen of lots of the studies I've looked at, that explains why BFR is so effective in health and fitness, not in just physical therapy. And I'll talk about the distinction of those as we go. But so far, blood flow restriction training is very well respected in the physical therapy world. And it's just starting to come into the fitness world, but it's not as widely used as it should be. It is a highly, highly underutilized tool. And this study will start to explain why it's so good for just general health and fitness. So this study was published May 16th, 2025. So hot off the press, like a month ago. So it's brand new. And as I said, it's looking at the perceptual, which means how someone perceives an exercise. How hard does someone perceive an exercise to be? They're looking at that perception between heavy lifting and light lifting with BFR. And they're also looking at a metabolic response measured by lactate accumulation. And they're looking at lactate accumulation between the heavy group and the light group with BFR. The way they did the program, they had the same group of 14 people do both programs 2 days apart. So it's all the same people, which is kind of nice. It's like not two different groups of people, but it's the exact same people doing both protocols. So it cuts out any sort of bias between groups. Each group did the exact same 8 exercises in the exact same order. And they measure their rate of perceived exertion after every exercise, and they measure their lactate accumulation after every exercise. So before we jump in, I'm going to share a couple slides just so you can see some graphs. But before I jump into that, I want to talk a little bit about what does lactate accumulation mean? Because if you're not someone that's, deep into, science of biology and exercise physiology, you might not be familiar with lactate accumulation. Lactate is a byproduct that our muscles produce. They're producing it all the time. As you exercise, it produces more of it. You've probably heard of lactic acid, which is kind of a slang term for blood lactate levels. And it's also associated with fatigue. And like when you work out, you feel that fatigue or burn. That is an increase in lactate in your muscle. For a long time, they misunderstood lactate and they thought it was just a waste product. It's just a waste product that we build and it gets us fatigued and it's not good. Well, they've now realized, lo and behold, that it's actually a super powerful and important tool for our body. It is fuel. It's not a waste product. It's actually fuel for our body. It fuels our muscles. It's actually uniquely good fuel for both our heart and our brain. So really important for brain health, really important for heart health. So getting higher amounts of lactate during workouts is actually a very positive thing from that standpoint. Also, lactate is a sign of using our type 2 muscle fibers, which are our muscles that are stronger, and they're also the ones that atrophy more quickly as we age. So we want to use our type 2 muscle fibers as much as we can. Lactate accumulation is a sign that we've been using our type 2 muscle fibers. Our type 2 muscle fibers are great because they help with insulin sensitivity, because the fuel for type 2 muscles is glucose. So the more glucose we can use during a workout, the better the more storage we'll have for insulin, and it'll reduce our insulin sensitivity. So lactate accumulation shows we're using type 2 muscle fibers, and type 2 muscle fibers are great for us. Also, accumulation of lactate stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis, so gives us more and healthier mitochondria. And you've probably heard the word mitochondria, even if you don't know exactly what it means. It is one of the most important cells in our body that gives us energy, and the healthier they are, the more efficient they are, and the more of them that we have, the more energy we'll have, the healthier we will be. And it's very linked to aging. And if we can have healthier mitochondria as we age, we're going to feel way better. So lactate accumulation helps with that. And the last thing, and maybe most important thing, is the amount of lactate we have in our body when we're working out signals our body to release human growth hormone. The more lactate that accumulates, the bigger human growth hormone response we get. And that's important because human growth hormone is very well known to help to increase muscle mass, to repair tissue, to help lose body fat, and to increase energy, among a bunch of other things, actually. But human growth hormone is one of the best hormones as we age. It gets harder to get as we age, but lactate accumulation is the key. That is what signals to our brain to release human growth hormone. So blood flow restriction has been shown to have many benefits, but I would say that the increase in lactate accumulation is one of the most important benefits that BFR provides us, that makes getting a higher lactate in a workout very accessible. Okay, so hopefully that was understandable and not too deep in the science. I'm gonna share my screen here and just go through a few slides real quick directly from the study, just to visualize some things for you. All right, so here we have just the title. I've already said this, but published May 16, 2025, the perceptual and metabolic response to blood flow training with low load and high load lifting. Okay. I might mention that this is interesting. For the high load group, they use 70% of max weight. For the low load BFR group, they used 30% of max. So a really big difference, 70% of your max or 30%. So a lot lower weight with the blood flow restriction, which is the key of why this is important. So this slide right here on the left, we have rate of perceived exertion, as you can see over here, and the light gray is heavy load lifting, and the black is low load with BFR. So you can see on average for all participants, the high load lifting was quite a bit higher. It's about an 8 out of 10 in the perceived exertion, where the low load BFR was a 6 out of 10. So basically, that just means the people doing the BFR and light load felt like they weren't working quite as hard, okay? But interestingly, on the next graph over, it was an inverse relationship. The high load, this is the peak blood lactate. So the average peak blood lactate was about 7 millimoles per liter for the high load group, and it was about 10 millimoles per liter for the low group with BFR. So that's a pretty significant difference. And BFR was definitely clearly higher, even though it felt easier. And I'll get back to why that's so important a little later. But so the low load showed on average higher. Now this next graph will show you per exercise. So the bottom of this axis, you see E1, E2, that's exercise 1 through 8. The left side shows the in the light gray, that's the high load group. So you see for every single exercise, the high load group perceived the exertion to be harder. So around an 8, it bounces around above and below an 8, depending on the exercise. And then the blood flow restriction group, it was perceived for every exercise to be easier. The next graph is the one I'm going to zoom into this one. This is really the graph to me that makes this study so impactful and unique, and why this study excites me. So if you look at this graph here, you have rest as the first column, and you see the high load and the low load are the same, which they should be. They haven't done anything yet, so this is just resting lactate levels in all the people in the study. If you go to the next column after exercise 1, there's a very slight difference. The low load BFR is a little higher, but very slight, and that might not even be statistically significant, or that could be maybe room for error. So that's after 1 exercise. And then if you see after 2, it's a little bit greater. And then as you go down, as you look at exercise 7, 6, 7, and 8, significantly more blood lactate in the light blood flow group than the heavy group. And this to me is the key of the study. Why? Because most studies up until now, I won't go to that slide quite yet. Most studies up until now have focused on one or two muscle groups in the study. Okay, so they're looking at, oh, let's do bicep curls and study heavy load versus low load with BFR. Or let's look at knee extension. That's a super common one they study all the time. Let's look at leg extension on one leg, and let's study high load and low load. Well, if you just do one exercise in the study, it's going to show that blood flow, low load with blood flow restriction and high load are about the same. And that's what most studies say is like, it's already great news that you can get the same result with a light load using BFR as you can with heavy. But what those studies aren't capturing is the cumulative effect of a real life workout. How many people go to the gym and do one exercise, right? Like that's not how we work out in real life. That's sometimes the problem with studies is they can be so focused and isolated on looking at one aspect. They're not really capturing real world results. But this study looks at 8 exercises in a row in one workout, and it shows that blood flow restriction is clearly a better metabolic, gives you a way better metabolic response than heavy load. So this is the first study to me that I've seen that really shows this across a whole workout. So this last study, I'm just going to read real quick because this last slide, I thought this was a really good paragraph. A lot of these paragraphs are really, cumbersome and hard to read, but I thought this was a great paragraph that just sums it up. It says, the current findings suggest that training with light load and BFR increases lactate accumulation when compared to high load, reinforcing the influence of BFR on lactate metabolism due to ischemia during exercise. Now, this is already proven out. We know this, and this has been proven out across multiple studies. But here's the part that's interesting. The current results also evidence that the lactate values during low load were significantly higher than the high load training only after the second exercise of the session, indicating there's no difference between protocols during the first and second exercise, so only the first and second exercise align with previous studies that simulate align with previous studies. So this study it highlights the effects of the multiple exercise performance on the difference in blood lactate accumulation. So awkward sentences there, but really I'm just showing you that it's saying the same thing that I summarized, which is this is the first study that really shows there's a much bigger accumulation of effect when they did the multiple exercise training session versus just one or two exercises. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share of the slides. That's all I really wanted to show you from the study. Like I said, if you want to see the study yourself, I'm happy to share the link to the study afterwards. So I'm happy to do that. But those to me were the big key takeaways. And the other thing I want to say is about the rate of perceived exertion. So the people that when they were lifting heavy, they felt like the workout was harder, even though actually they got a better metabolic response when they felt like they weren't working as hard. Why is this important? It's important because most people, there's going to be a lot more people that are willing and able to work out at a 6 than there are people that can safely or even want to work out in an 8. So that makes blood flow restriction training so much more approachable for so many more people and also safer for so many more people. So the rate of perceived exertion is big in that way. That's like you're getting a better result with blood flow restriction, but you're not having to push yourself as hard. Okay, one other thing that the study didn't really talk about, heavy lifting also becomes even harder as we age. Okay, no matter how healthy and fit you are, as you age, our cartilage gets thinner. So heavy loads at some point our body becomes less tolerant of heavy loads. It starts to cause joint pain or achiness or more soreness. The micro tears that you get in your muscle from heavy lifting that you do not get from blood flow restriction, by the way, the micro tears actually cause inflammation. When you're younger, you can deal with inflammation pretty quickly. Think about, having a scratch when you're a kid versus getting a scratch when you're older. It takes a lot longer to heal. Our body takes longer to heal. So if we're doing trauma during a heavy lift as we get older, it's in some cases going to do more harm than good, or it's going to just take us a lot longer to recover from. So heavy lifting starts to become even less of a positive as we get older. And the metabolic response we get from heavy lifting starts to get weaker as we age because we don't have as many healthy hormones. We try to lift heavy. And even if you're still trying to lift heavy, you just notice at some point, I'm not getting the same results I used to get. And that's because we're not getting as big of a metabolic response. So this study shows that BFR is uniquely positioned to help us as we're aging because it gives us this disproportionate boost in our metabolic response, which is what we need for those healthy hormones, but at a load and level that our body can tolerate, that our joints can tolerate, that we don't have to spend days recovering from. So we can work out more consistently. Our body feels better. We get out of pain. There's a positive motivation cycle because you're working out in a way that feels good to your body and you're getting healthier responses. I have a virtual coaching company, most of you know, called Celly Strength. And we actually have seen, we've seen significant real world results. So we've been having people do blood flow restriction training as their full fitness program 3 times a week, 4 times a week for 20, 25 minutes. And we've seen incredible results. People that were working out before that were maybe not gaining strength or having pain or not able to lose the weight that they wanted to lose. And low energy, that's another big one as people age. They started the BFR program. They immediately felt stronger. They immediately had more energy across the board. Everyone says, I feel so much more energy training this way because of your mitochondria, because of your human growth hormone that you're getting. Body fat becomes easier to lose and pain starts to go down. We actually did a 6-month women's study that I'm super, super proud of. We spent a lot of time and effort and hard work in doing this study, and we're publishing a white paper this week, which I'll be releasing. I'll release to all you guys. And next month, I'm going to actually break that down in a webinar. But what is so cool is that the study I just talked about today about the increase in lactate is the physiological explanation of why we're seeing such great results with people in our program. That is what's going on in your body that is causing increase in strength, decrease in body fat, increase in energy, decrease in pain. It is all explained through this increase of lactate accumulation. So that's why I was so excited to see this study. It really supports what we found in practical. You know, like I said, sometimes science and practical application, sometimes it's hard to find things that line up. But I've been in the field. I've done this practically. I've seen the results. And now the science is really lining up and explaining exactly why we're seeing those results. I'm also really excited because this last weekend with my company, we just launched for the first time a free 30-day trial to try BFR with our coaching program. And we made this free because it's actually pretty expensive for us to do. We have to buy a lot of inventory in advance. It's not the smartest business decision if I didn't think this program worked. But I want to offer it free because I want more people to be willing to try it. And because BFR is relatively new on the fitness field and people are a little bit unsure about it, I wanted to make it a no-brainer and easy for people to try for no risk. 30 days free. We send you the bands for free to try it. At the end of 30 days, if you don't feel like it's helping you, you can send it back. If you like it at the end, you either join our coaching program or you buy the bands. So you get to try it. I don't think there's any other way that you can really try BFR legitimately 3 days a week, 20-minute workouts to see if you feel the results that are shown in this study and that the people that have gone through our program already have been having. So if you're interested in jumping on that free trial, you just go to cellystrength.com. I'll follow up with an email and it's all right there. The free trial's right on the homepage. But we'd love any of you who are interested to give that a try. And I'm now going to go to chat and see what comments we have there, and then also open it up for any comments. So let's see. Yes, Elaine, I know. It's so exciting. I'm glad you feel the excitement for me. Yes, lactate is great fuel for the heart and brain. I've even had a couple doctors talk to me about maybe this BFR could be really good for traumatic brain injuries. So that's something that's super interesting. There was another study that just came out on BDNF, which is a really important thing for brain health. And they're showing that BFR produces more BDNF than regular working out. So I actually think we're at the tip of the iceberg of what we're learning about BFR and all the great things it can do for our body, especially as we're aging. The demographic of the study, this is a great question, very typical. The demographic of the study was males, young males in their 20s. So, and the study even said this, that the more studies need to be done. That's why our study was on women in midlife, because we know there's not enough studies on women, and there's definitely not enough studies on women in midlife. And we got incredible results. We need to do this type of study on different demographics, different genders, different ages. What my assumption would be is these men could lift heavy without pain. They're in their 20s. They're getting a healthy metabolic response from heavy lifting. BFR, they're getting a bigger metabolic response. As people age, the metabolic response they're getting from heavy lifting is not going to be as robust. So that's going to go down. Maybe the response from BFR will go down as well, but based on all the things I've seen practically, there is still more of a metabolic response you're going to get from BFR than heavy lifting, no matter your age. So yes, this needs to be studied at different ages, and that's partly why we did our women's study. Let's see, Susan asks, does this change your thinking about needing to still lift heavy one day a week? Good question. Okay, so my recommendation around BFR and heavy lifting, I am not saying that heavy lifting is necessarily bad or has no place. I think for most people, as we age, heavy lifting is just not giving us the benefits it used to get, and there's a smarter way to do it. What heavy lifting does for you, it helps central nervous system, like neural drive to the muscle, and it puts tension on our tissues, so bone and tendons. So what I do in my personal workout, if you can work out heavy lifting and it does not cause you pain, then I would do heavy lifting one day a week, a short, maybe 20, 30-minute heavy lifting to get that load, that tension, and that central nervous system drive. But I have found, and through the people I've worked with, for just normal everyday life as we're aging, if you can't lift heavy without pain, that's going to do you more harm than good. I would focus all on BFR. And obviously for each person, I could talk to you more about that. And Susan, we can talk more about that. Honestly, I'm not sure anyone knows exactly for sure yet about that answer. And I'm just going with my instincts and how I feel personally and what I've seen with other clients. I'm kind of like checking the boxes, but it's certainly not worth putting yourself at a detriment for, in my opinion. Let's see, what other questions? Yes, the exercises they did in the study, there were a bench press, a row, bicep curl, tricep extension, leg extension, leg curl, leg press, so like a squat, but a leg press, and calf raises. So pretty good, like, traditional kind of isolated machine-based workout, but hitting all the major muscle groups. So those are the exercises they used. They did upper body first, then they did lower body, but they did the same order of exercises in both groups. The sets and reps, yes, I should have said that. They were pretty similar. Every exercise, they did 3 sets. For heavy load, they did 12 reps. And for low load BFR, they did 15 reps, which I also thought was kind of interesting because most people talk about with BFR, you want to start with more like 30 reps because you really want to increase that burn. You want to get that ischemia, that low oxygen in the muscle. And a lot of times the sets are 30, 30, 20, 15, or 30, 20, 5, 20, or sometimes even 30, 30, 30, depends on your weight. So I actually thought their reps were a little low with BFR. And that's part of the trick, and why I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg is people are still learning what the most effective exercise protocol is with BFR. And every study, it's a little different. It's more, it's less, it's a higher percentage, it's a lower percentage. The band tightness is different. So there's so many variables that they're still learning what is the best way to use BFR. I think we're just going to get better at it over time, and it's going to show even more promise. So again, in conclusion, I'm not saying that heavy lifting is bad. Obviously, it's worked for years. And what I'm saying is that BFR gives us a bigger metabolic response with less stress on our body, which I think is the key to aging more with more health, fitness, energy, strength without the joint damage or just inflammation in our body that maybe isn't helping us anymore. All right, so I answered all the chat. If I can open it up now, I'll put us back on gallery view and open up. Does anyone else have any questions they want to ask live? Great questions in the chat, by the way. Anyone? Wahida, you got any questions out there today?
Ash.
Elaine, is that Elaine?
Yeah. Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Was there a time element to this? Like, I know that what I've is there
Shoot.
a element of like when things
So
either benefits, yeah.
So you cut out a little bit, Elaine. I think what you're asking is like the time of the workout and like in between the exercises and stuff. Is that what you're asking?
Like total time of work, you know.
Yeah. So the way they did the test, the total time, because I think, with BFR, we don't wear the cuffs for more than 25 minutes about in a row. This test, the way they did it, because they had to test blood lactate between each exercise, they took the bands off, or they at least got rid of all the pressure to take the lactate test, and then they reapplied the bands. So there was about 3 minutes of rest between each exercise, each BFR exercise. So it wasn't like, so the whole this whole workout probably took, 45 minutes or so, but it was with, a few minutes with the bands on, a few minutes with the bands off, a few minutes with the bands on, a few minutes with the bands off, which actually I found was interesting, that the blood lactate continued to be higher because they were having 3 minutes with the bands off in between. You would think that the blood lactate would almost start to go away during that time. So when we do the workouts, we keep the bands on the whole time. I'm curious if the blood lactate gets even higher when you're not taking the bands off for 3 minutes in between each exercise. Yeah, Emily has a question.
I was just curious, I don't know if you mentioned this, but who sponsored this study, and where can we take a look at it? Because I'm always curious about kind of like motives behind, or if you have any insight about who ran the study and what their motives were.
Yeah, they have to put on there if there's any like conflict of interest or anything. It was a bunch of authors, a few different universities, São Paulo University in Brazil. There was, I'd have to look more closely. I won't spend the time now. I'll send you the article, but there was no conflict of interest. It didn't seem motivated by a company or, a product or anything. So that's another reason why I liked it. It just looked like they're really trying to, some postgraduate program, the Institute of Health and Sciences, and Rehabilitation Science Institute was also involved. So it just seemed like a lot of universities and institutes, which is what, a lot of people do research just.
So it's like academia more than academia.
Like exactly.
Than corporate based. Okay, that's very
exactly.
And are you going to have a link to the study in the chat so we can look at it, or?
Yeah.
I mean, not maybe after or something.
Yeah. What I'll do, I'm putting my website link here for anyone that wants to check that out. You can always message me from there. Also, I'll send in a couple days or the next day or two, I'll send a recording of this out in an email because all of you registered. And in that email, I will send a link to the study so you can find it that way as well. Elaine, I see you.
Yeah. Is there a way people can understand that lactate is building up in their body without having it scientifically measured?
Oh, great question. Yes. And if you've ever done BFR, and I know you have, Elaine, lactate, that feeling of the burn that you get when you're working out it's not directly lactate. It's the one of the byproducts, one of the ions, but essentially it's the lactate building in your muscle that causes that burn. So when you're doing a BFR workout and you feel the burn that is more than you've ever had when you've just done a regular workout, that's telling you I'm doing this right. If I'm getting an intense burn, that is directly related to the human growth hormone response you're going to get. That's showing you that you have a high lactate level. If you aren't getting burn in the workout, then you need to tighten your bands more. And that's something I coach you through, but definitely the tightness of the bands will make a difference. You want to have that accumulation of lactate, which you feel it as a burn. So that's one of the nice things. You can tell in the moment if you're doing it right and getting that response. And yeah, Susan asked why only for 25 minutes. So the biggest reason why 25 minutes is there's two things. One, just not having your blood flow slow down for a super long time. You want to take it off. That's why in this study, the study could be longer because they took it off for 3 minutes and then put it back on. So if you were working out like that, you could do a workout longer than 25 minutes, but you're not supposed to have the bands for long because you want to just let that blood flow go back to normal. But the other thing is, if you're doing BFR correctly and really pushing yourself, you don't need to work out as long because you're getting this fatigue and this increased lactate much more quickly and much more at a much higher level. So if you work out too much, you will just get, it's too much. You'll just get fatigued. You'll start producing cortisol. But Susan, I know you've been doing this for a long time. And if you feel fine and want to do a 25-minute strength workout and then a cardio workout after that, I would just take a break with the bands, get some water, walk around, maybe take a 5-minute break, and then do the cardio. And then I would just watch your energy levels. I wouldn't recommend that to someone who's new to BFR, but since you've been doing it for, I think, more than a year now, and you had a high level of fitness coming in, you could play with that and just watch your fatigue level. You want to feel energized after a BFR workout. You don't want to feel overly fatigued afterwards or the next morning, and you don't really need to feel sore. So those are some good ways to know, did I go too far? Did I do too much? I know I experienced that firsthand when I was doing BFR, and I was so excited that by the end of the first week, I literally was like almost like could not stay awake. And it was just because I had so much systemic fatigue from all this metabolic response from what I was doing. And if you do that all the time, that's going to definitely not help you get the results you want to get. So just keep an eye on the energy. And Susan, we can also talk about that more in a call and go deeper on some programming ideas for you. But yeah, just play with it. That's the nice thing about it. You can generally tell how you feel. And like Elaine's question, you can tell in the moment if you're getting the metabolic response that the goal is. You can feel it during the workout. Even in your first workout, you know that BFR is a different feeling than traditional strength training. So it can be, it's not intimidating. It's actually a pretty easy method. I think that's the other thing. People get intimidated by the name, or it just sounds like, I'm not sure what it is, but it's not intimidating. It's for those of you who haven't seen it, you just wear these little cuffs. They're rubber. They're not even that uncomfortable. You just put them on your arm, you pump them up, and they're very easy to use, not intimidating. So for those of you who haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend giving it a shot, because I've had many people on my program tell me that it's really changed their life, and it has for me personally. And that's why I'm out here talking about it. So, all right. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for being on. I loved all the questions. And I'll be sending out the recording with a link. If anyone wants to get in touch with me for questions or anything else, you can reach me through my website, or you can reach me through my email. And that's it. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ashley. This was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, Elaine.